Transmissions jammed. Proximity coverage only. Backup activated. System rebooted.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 4 of Proximity Coverage. I'm your host RogueGold and I'm so glad that you could join me on this wonderful Sunday. Some interesting news dropped this week regarding TU 12.1 details, as well as finally getting an acknowledgement from the devs about the anxiety that the community is feeling right now in regards to the whole Star Wars situation, but we still have nothing major or hints as to what may be coming next. I've been hearing some things, but we'll save that for another day. Today, we've got a great central topic to cover, and that is raids versus incursions. Before we dive into it, I do have to apologize because I'm not going to have a episode next weekend. I'm going to have to skip just due to other obligations, but after that point, we should be starting to get some news as to the direction as for where the franchise is headed, so I'll be sure to update you all at that point. Don't hesitate to keep sending in questions for the show, however. I just have a stockpile of them all, so it certainly can't hurt for you to keep doing that. With that all said, let's just jump right into this week's topic, raids versus incursions. What did each of them do well, and what could be best to focus on in the future? So the first thing I want to point out as far as this topic goes is that I put out a community poll, was it yesterday or a few days ago from when I'm recording this, asking your guys' thoughts about what type of content you preferred more. So the question I posed was, which type of content do you prefer more, raids or incursions? And so 26%, we had, thank you if you voted, we had over 200 votes on this. 26% said that they prefer raids more, that's the type of content they enjoy more, and 74% enjoyed incursions more. So that's not too surprising. I was expecting maybe something around that. I honestly thought incursions might get a few higher points, but I'm glad. I think that's a nice even split of about 1/4 preferred raids and 3/4 preferred incursions, and that doesn't surprise me too much. And so, moving on from that into the broad topic of which one do I like more, it's honestly really hard for me to say I like one over the other. Of course, incursions come with a sense of nostalgia and, memories of, running them with friends in the past. But raids are certainly, nothing to laugh at. I've said before, and I think I stand by that raids might be my favorite type of content in the Division 2. Obviously, since the PvP is a lot better in Division 1, I'm not going to say that I like the Dark Zone necessarily more than them. And I think that they're a lot better than a lot of the PvE content in this game. I don't have anything against the main missions or control points or anything, but the raids offer such variety and such intricate and intense mechanics that for me personally, it's very fun as a more, hardcore type player, as someone who's able to get 8 people together. I mean, I just use the LFG groups. I don't, have 8 people in my clan that I run raids with. So I've always been able to take advantage of that feature, and I think some people don't always realize that it's an option. But yeah, so as for which I like more, I love the grandiose of raids. All right, we're going to get into specifics on each of these in a bit, but just the overall scale and, grandeur of these raids and the bosses and the loot and everything comes together very nicely. I think Massive and I think Ubisoft Annecy, I finally looked up on it. I think Annecy was the developer that really focused in on those raids. So they did a great job, and I think for their first time doing them, both Dark Hours and Iron Horse are fantastic pieces of content. At the same time, I really love the replayability of the incursions, and we'll come back to this again. We're going to deep dive on each of them, but just remembering back to like the global events and running the Clear Sky specifically to get all the different tokens was such a great experience, and I really think that incursions bring something that the raids just don't do as terms of connectedness with your team. You can do it with just 3 other friends. There's something certainly nice about that. So let's get into a bit of a spotlight. So let's start with raids. The things that I think raids did exceptionally well were, 1, set design. Both Dark Hours and Iron Horse are very strict and explicit to their tone and the themes that they're going for. I think the airport in Dark Hours does a really good job kind of portraying, it looks very abandoned in terms of like people showed up there to try and escape the green poison when it first hit, and now it's just completely abandoned and the Black Tusk have moved in. There's certainly, overall, I think Iron Horse is a better raid, so I think there's a bit less of a cohesive story that's happening in Dark Hours compared to Iron Horse, but that said, there's still, I like how once you get there, I don't entirely remember if it's at the very beginning, but Manny's like, we have to take out the Razorback. It's telling you about the final boss right from the start, and then you're just finding these other bosses and encounters as you move through the airport. I think that's really good. The bosses all fit into their environments very well, I would say. So set design, as far as the raids are concerned, is certainly something they did very well. Also, the difficulty and mechanics, I think, are perfect. Some people are going to disagree. I know a lot of people still think that raids are too difficult. I and again, this is coming from the perspective as a more hardcore player, I don't think they are too difficult, but again, obviously that's just my perspective. Obviously on day one, in those first few weeks after you're trying to learn it, it is difficult, and that's the entire point of what a raid is. In any game, like World of Warcraft, Destiny is the closest comparison. That's the point of the raid, is that at first, you're trying to figure out, what the hell you're doing, but after you do, and even if I go in and do raids now, I did one the other week that I was using for some footage, we just kind of blew through every boss. I think we only wiped once on one of the bosses. I don't even remember which one it was, but once you get it down, you don't even have to have a team that you can just jump in with an LFG. As long as everyone has a basic understanding of how the fight works, it's pretty easy for you all to work together and to complete the encounter. And at that point, I feel like the mechanics, especially in Iron Horse, just work really well for everyone to fit in, do their role, get the job done, and you feel accomplished afterwards. And I think that's really good. And the difficulty as far as the ads are concerned, again, I think, it makes you feel like you're in a real endgame activity, because even the red bars at some points are really tanky. And while some people, again, don't like that, that's fine. I just think it fits very well for the raid setting, and I think it culminates in a really great experience. So difficulty and mechanics are another spotlight for, I think, things that the raids did very well. And lastly, the loot. I think both the quality of the loot, being how currently in Division 2, the top sources for loot are Legendary and the raids, I think is a fantastic model to follow, because it incentivizes you to do that highest content and you're rewarded with the best loot, but it's not exclusive in that sense. But I also do enjoy that there are exclusive rewards from the raid. Again, some people don't like this. I may be having a very controversial 5 minutes here, but I enjoy it that there's an exclusive exotic. In Iron Horse's case, there's 2, and I do enjoy that there are exclusive sets, to the point where, I think it's fine that they put the general gear set in the open world, both Foundry, Bulwark, and Future Initiative, and then the chest pieces and backpacks are exclusive to the raid. I feel like that's a great compromise for, not blocking people out who can't do the raid, just they can't get the set entirely. They can get the set, they just can't get the 100% maximum benefit if they wanted to use those chest pieces and backpacks, unless you go through the raid, and that's how you get the blueprints too. So I think that's a fine model, and like I said, I enjoy that there are some exclusive rewards, because it just gives you a sense of, purpose and reward for going through this really tough raid. Almost, one of the most challenging pieces of content in the game besides Legendary. You're rewarded with high tier loot, high rolls, and you have the chance to get these exclusive rewards, which in most cases are very good. I think some people kind of disregard the Ravenous for how good it is. I really love the Ravenous, and I think that both the Eagle Bear and the Ravenous being the 2 primary exotic rewards, obviously the Regulus in Iron Horse is one as well, but the Ravenous is the main one from the final chest, and I think both the Eagle Bear and that are great final rewards, and they incentivize me for sure to go back and play through to eventually get those, so I really like that. Moving on to what was not done as well in raids, I think there are 2 big things. The first I mentioned before is the 8-player barrier is certainly a high barrier for people to, cross. Again, I don't think some people always take the fullest advantage of the LFG capabilities of their systems. I play on Xbox, and it's always very easy for me to find a group almost any time of any day, just doing the LFG for Division 2 that's built into the Xbox systems. There's always people recruiting for raids. Certainly, it would be harder to do it if you've never done it before. You're not going to find as many people who are openly willing to teach you. But I think discovery mode kind of serves that purpose, but it may be hard to matchmake. I don't entirely know. So yes, overall, an 8-player barrier is not a great thing to have, especially in a game at this point where its player base is dwindling after 2 years after release. So, that's certainly a disadvantage that the raids have going for them. And yeah, we'll come back to that in a bit, but I think that is something that the raids certainly have against them. And then also, they feel a lot more disconnected from the larger game than Incursions did in Div 1. Again, I'm going to come back to Incursions and especially their tie-ins with the global events, because I thought that was really good. But you never get like a project that says go complete the raid and you get some weekly reward. There's no like weekly incentive for going to do the raid. There's no, as far as I'm aware, there's no guaranteed exotic drop for the week, like you get from a Legendary now in Div 2, and like you did from Incursions in Div 1. Sure, you get good loot, but it's not targeted. You don't get any guarantees. And, I feel like it's a bit disconnected from the overall endgame, and that's certainly a disadvantage. Something that I think could have been done better. Like in Destiny 1, once they got to the point where the game was kind of shutting down, or not shutting down, but going into life support, they put like a weekly raid playlist where you had different modifiers and a certain objective for doing a different one each week. And I feel like that was a good way to keep it connected to the overall game. And I think raids have always been connected a bit more in Destiny. So that's something I wish Division would have taken up a little more so than they did, in the past. Moving on, let's talk about Incursions. What did they do well? It's a little bit harder to talk about Incursions broadly because the 4 of them are all very different from each other. If you play Division 1, I'm sure you know that. There are 2 things that I want to highlight. One is the good. I just think overall Incursions were a very good endgame feature for Division 1's context. Division 1 was a very, I guess you could say, friend-centric game. Division 2 is certainly more solo-friendly, I think, than Division 1 was. Division 1 was really built around that idea of having a squad of 4 to go around and do stuff, and Incursions were a very, easy step forward from level 30 into this endgame, into playing the harder content. I just think they fit very well into that context. And also, like I just mentioned, raids had a disadvantage here. Incursions were very connected to the larger game and endgame. Maybe not so much when they were first introduced, but certainly at update 1.6 and 1.8, they had, like I said before, weekly exotic drops, which in Division 1 meant a lot more because you couldn't just get one exotic and then god roll it, from your... what do they even call that? Reconfiguration station. Still hate that thing. In Div 2, so exotics meant a lot more in Div 1, and you got a weekly drop of those each time you completed one of the 4 incursions, so that was great. And also during the global events, it was one of my favorite things to go, especially when it was on Clear Sky. I don't remember which global event that was tied to. Was it Assault? Was it the one where when you were close to them, you got a lot of damage? Whichever one it was, running Clear Sky over and over and over on Heroic with your friends to get all those tokens, one of my best memories of Div 1, at least as far as PvE is concerned, because that was just so fun, and Clear Sky was a really great one for replayability, just because it was quick and easy. It wasn't the best in terms of really story or mechanics or anything, but like I said, it was just really fun, short, replayable, high intensity, just a lot of action, a lot of fun, and so I'm always going to remember that fondly, and I think that was something they had going for them very well, was their connectedness to the larger game and the larger endgame. Not done as well in Incursions were certainly mechanics, but again, not all of them. What was the first one called? Falcon Lost and Clear Sky didn't really have that many mechanics. They had like 1 or 2, so they didn't really have much. Dragon's Nest had so much potential. If they had just made that final fight with the fire truck where you had to actually move away from the fire, you can just counteract it with a immunizer support station. That could have been such a flawless incursion, because that first fight with the 4 horsemen was so good. I loved how it was like you had to make the choice of either killing all 4 of them at the same time to stop the ads from spawning, or if you killed one, more ads spawned and it just got more intense. That was a really fantastic fight, but then that stupid fire truck, which was a great cleaner boss, I thought that was just, Dragon's Nest I really love, but it was just that final fight, how it was like you basically could ignore all the mechanics of the room where you had to move away from the fire, that, the parts of the floor would get signified in red, meaning it was about to get, burned by the truck. But you could just sit there with an immunizer and counteract it. If they had actually made you move around the room, like if you stayed in the fire, even in an immunizer, it would have damaged you and killed you pretty quick, and you had to move around the room in like a certain order, a certain pattern or something to avoid the fire, that would have been such a good fight. I think it would have elevated the entire thing. But that aside, the mechanics of that one were weak, because of that. But Stolen Signal was fantastic. Each of those rooms, I think, had a great identity, especially the one in the, what was it, like a nightclub? The one with the water on the floor, the electricity, the hostage hanging from the ceiling. That's got to be maybe my favorite PvE fight in all of Division 1. It was just really great. And the final boss wasn't as strong, but it had really great stuff too. So overall, the mechanics of Incursions were kind of weak, but that very last one, Stolen Signal, was great. And I think that was kind of their blueprint moving forward for the raids. So that's the deep dives on the 2 of them. So now we moved back to the kind of broad question for the central topic today, which would be better for the devs to focus on for the future in, say, like a potential Division 3. While I love raids, as I just explained, I think the best path to move forward for the entire community, especially considering the community poll we had where 76% of people favored incursions, I think the better move for the future would be to include the elements that the raids did well, like awesome set design, the richer and more intricate mechanics, include that into 4-man incursion activities that has a weekly source of good loot, like exotics if there's no stupid reconfiguration station, add exclusive clothing, like you had with the riot set in Clear Sky, exclusive gear sets, maybe the same model as Division 2, where not all of it is exclusive to the content, but just, some of the key pieces and exotics. And I think if you did that, if you combine the best of both worlds into a 4-man incursion activity, that would be the best step moving forward for a greater endgame activity. That way it creates a much more accessible endgame that hopefully pleases both audiences of Incursions, because they have a lower bar of entry. They can get in there with 3 of their friends or 3 randoms and hopefully learn the mechanics. And it also, pleases the raid audience because there would be much more intricate and fun mechanics. Like, I think there's certainly a lot more room to do, greater mechanics than we had even in Stolen Signal in Div 1. You can have teams of 2 split up. You can go 3 and 1 to do different, needed things for a boss fight. There's a lot they could do. And I think, just including those aspects of the raid into Incursions would be better overall for the community. Also, like I said before, hopefully these would have much more replayability and connect more to the end game. Because like I said, while I think raids are really great, they don't have a lot of replayability after you get those exclusive rewards because there's no weekly tie-in. And again, it's just not very connected to the end game. There's no, overall goals to go complete a raid, no project to do that, no incentive to go back and keep doing it every week. Whereas the Incursions had those exotics, had the tie-ins with the global events, and I think that really helped solidify them into the end game and into the Division 1 experience. All right, I think that wraps up the discussion on raids versus incursions. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on it below, which type of content you enjoy more and which you think the devs should focus on for the future. Moving on to community submitted questions. Quick reminder, if you want something answered on a future episode, be sure to send it in anywhere you can reach me and label it as something you want answered on the show so I can address it accordingly. Let's go. All right, kicking off, I wanted to start with one from Sneaky Stripes, which actually relates to the main topic of this week, so that's convenient. And thank you for all your continued questions, man. I really appreciate it. For future raids, should exotic abilities be another enticing loot reward instead of just weapons or gear, or maybe exotic skins that let you blend in with enemy factions as long as you don't engage them in combat? Very interesting proposition for sure. I think that while I like the concept or the idea of exotic abilities, I think if you were to put skills behind something like raids, people will just get even more upset than they are now about the exclusive rewards, right? As cool as I think it is, there's certainly more people who disagree with the idea of exclusivity than I do, or than me and others agree with it. So I think people would get very mad at that. I don't know about allowing me to blend in with enemies. That's certainly a very interesting concept. I don't know how well that would work for balance stuff. What they could do, and what has certainly been underutilized in Div 2 so far, is the slot for modding your skill's appearance. Like if you pre-ordered the game, you got the special Seeker Mine and Firefly and Flame Turret. They could certainly do stuff like that for the raid, like different colors and effects. That would be really cool. So if they wanted to make exotic ones of those and make them really neat, that's certainly something they could put in that would have no impact on gameplay, would just be a purely cosmetic reward and another incentive to do that end-game content. So that's certainly something that I would want them to do. So thanks for that one. Shannon asked a really great question about PvP. What did you like about Division PvP versus Division 2 PvP? What things would you pull to make a single third game, or would you base it off of one game over the other? So, I thought about this, and obviously my thoughts are out there. I love Division 1 PvP. Is there anything I would take from Division 2's PvP? I suppose I would take the PvE, how do I say this? The overall workings of the Division 2 Dark Zone. While I hate the size, while I hate the turrets, while I hate how close the extractions are, the way that the landmarks fit into the overall gameplay flow of the DZ in Division 2, I think is a good way. I would change how the landmarks kind of randomly pop in and out. I would love it to return where, like in Div 1, you can see where all the landmarks are, and then they just turn gray when they're inactive. I think that should come back. But the amount of XP you get, the way that they are just able to be farmed really efficiently, I think is a really great addition. So I would certainly keep the PvE elements, as well as one thing you have to give Div 2 credit for is that the loot that you get for PvPing is so much more than you got in Div 1. Sure, it's just caches and you can't target anything, but the amount you can get off of a single manhunt is pretty astronomical if you're at rank 50, and I think that's a really enticing thing for PvP. So that's what I would take from Div 2 is some of the concepts of their Dark Zone, not the size, not the turrets, none of that, but the rewards and the landmark amount and incentive to do them. I suppose I also appreciate how there's different difficulties. I think it just brings another element of randomness, I suppose. So that stuff I would bring from Div 2, and then from Div 1, obviously the size of the Dark Zone, the amount of extractions, the safe houses, everything like that, the combat. But we'll get to that in a sec. So yeah, that's what I would do from one game or the other. So thanks for that question. That was a really good one. And then similarly, this is kind of a part 2 to that. Aaron asked, what changes or updates would you like to see improve the PvP combat in Division 3? So there I would bring in a lot of the stuff from Div 1, like the movement. I've said before that I like the fluidity of Division 2's movement. I think that it's a lot smoother, and you could do cover to cover better. You can hop over stuff. There's more varied animations, but I still prefer Division 1's snappiness of being able to strafe a little bit more. You can turn corners a bit faster, whip around, quicker. So I would kind of blend those two to make better overall movement that pertains to better PvP in Div 3. And then, of course, I would also bring back the burst healing. I've said that a million times. I think that's the biggest issue with Division 2, is that we have no burst healing to counteract those super up close and, burst damage builds. So that would certainly be something I bring back, because it's certainly lacking in my perspective as a PvP player. Aaron also asks, what are your thoughts on hunters randomly showing up in the Division 3 DZ, perhaps at the time an extraction is called, and potentially stealing the player's loot? 100%. I think anything that could add in a future Dark Zone to add more randomness is going to be 100% welcome, because that's the whole point of the Dark Zone. It's supposed to be unpredictable, lawless, just a ton of stuff going on. I think Division 1 was close to that with the supply drops and the contaminate events, but certainly having something like hunters randomly showing up at your extraction, maybe if you fight them and they kill you, then they take your loot, and then you can see them on your map. So if you respawn, you can go track them down throughout the Dark Zone and try and fight them again to get your stuff back. That would be an awesome addition. And then if you do kill them at the extraction, maybe they drop a guaranteed named item or exotic or just a good piece of gear. That would 100% be something I would love to see. And just more random stuff like that, the more they can add in, I think the more dynamic and the more fun the Dark Zone would become, and just become even more attractive to people who don't necessarily like it now. Aaron also asks about a potential increase for DZ loot quality up to Heroic or Legendary, and yeah, I support it 100%. The devs, before they all got moved to Star Wars, unfortunately, Nikki and Bruce were talking about increasing the DZ loot up to Heroic quality, and I think that would certainly be something I would hope to see in Division 3 if they kind of return to that style of difficulty versus loot quality system. Then certainly bumping up to Heroic I think would be good. I think that the DZ should just be on par with whatever the most difficult PvE content is. And if that means they have to buff the NPCs in the DZ, that's fine. Make the landmark NPCs as difficult as you want. Just keep what they really need to do is keep the roaming ads on the street easy to kill, easy to fight, because that's the most annoying thing, is when you're running around and you run into a gold patrol on the street and you just get messed up by them while you're trying to fight people. That's not fun at all. So yeah, increase loot quality, increase NPC difficulty if you need to, just keep those street patrols at a minimum, because they're the most annoying thing, not the most annoying thing, but one of the most annoying things in the Dark Zone for sure, in both Div 1 and Div 2 in my opinion. And thanks for all those questions, Aaron. I think I've finally gotten through your stockpile that you sent me a long time ago, so thank you for all those. They've been super helpful. Next up, we have another one from Sneaky Stripes asking, if PvP is reintroduced in a sequel, what mechanics should change or stay the same in order to be more enticing and rewarding to those who have a thirst for blood? And this is a great one, because I actually wanted to bring up an idea that I posted on my channel a long time ago. Or was it on my channel? Maybe it was on Twitter somewhere. I put this idea up and it never got implemented, but I think it could work very well to bring even more incentivization to PvP in the DZ, and that would be that manhunt runs, the rewards you get from them are dictated by how many kills you get. So let's say you start off and you get to manhunt rank 0, and you have, once your manhunt is completed, only if you complete it, not if you die, you have a 0% chance to receive an exotic or some other powerful reward at the end. But every time you kill one player, that percent goes up by 1. So let's say you kill 7 people and then you finish your manhunt. You have a 7% chance to then, at the end of your manhunt, receive, just like at the top of your screen, like you would from a, completion activity. You finish a mission, you get those rewards at the top. Finish your manhunt, 7 kills, 7% chance an exotic is going to show up there at the top. Then let's say you actually kill 15 people before you complete your manhunt, 15% chance. You can see where it's going, all the way up to, if you complete a manhunt and you've killed 100 people, then you get a 100% chance for an exotic or some other powerful reward. I feel like that would be a really great way to incentivize people to go manhunt a bit longer, because a lot of people just go manhunt, get a 1 or 2 count and go buy it off. And while that's not necessarily bad, they know it's playing to the system that is implemented in the game. I think it could be expanded, like you said, to be more enticing and rewarding to people who have a thirst for blood. Give manhunts a bit of a reason to go longer besides just a number counting above their head, right? So I think that would be a really great way. Let me know what you think about that one, because I've always been curious if people would like to see some sort of system like that. But that's my idea to satisfy that. So thank you. All right, and last up we have one from Tony asking, should side missions be opened up again? Perhaps perhaps open them after clearing all control points. Then once all side missions are completed, the control points are taken over again and the cycle continues. A way to keep the open world more alive, not that it isn't already. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any, super fond attraction to any of the side missions in Division 2, so I don't necessarily care for that myself, but I don't see anything wrong with them doing it, and I don't think it hurts at all, and it would certainly, like you said, just add a bit more variety to the open world. So certainly, if they would want to bring that back, sure. But something you mentioned for sure is I would love if they brought back the dynamic recapturing of control points. I really loved how in year 1 of Div 2, they would just dynamically be taken back over. You'd go clear an area, go to another one, then the first area was taken over again. Sure, some people don't like that, I understand. But I think if they gave the option in the map settings to either have random or dynamic recapturing turned on or, manual resetting of control points, I feel like that would be a nice option, because I certainly missed that from year 1. And it's not as fun, in my opinion, to go in your menu and manually reset the control points like you have to do now. So that part of your question I would certainly do. And while I don't have a, super special attraction to the side missions, certainly if they would want to bring them back, I'm sure that would do nothing but good. There's certainly no, negative aspect to doing that, so certainly I would support it. Thank you for that one, Tony. Okay, guys, and that's going to do it for this week's episode of Proximity Coverage. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. I very much hope you enjoyed this week's main topic as well as the questions I was able to answer. As always, leave your thoughts below and send in any questions you want answered in future episodes. I'll remind everyone once more, and I do apologize that there won't be an episode next weekend as I have other obligations, but after that point, we should have a bit more clarity on what the future may hold, so hopefully I can use that to guide the show here a little bit. But until then, thanks for your time and support. Have a wonderful day. And until next time, RogueGold, out.